to Elevate Maryland, a podcast with Maryland focus and Howard County roots. My name's Tom Cole, and I'm reporting live from my Ellicott City sound studio here in my basement and connected via the miracles of the internet to my co-host, Candace and Reed. Candace, how are you doing?
I'm good. I feel like we are jam-packing some shows in.
Oh my
goodness,
goodness,
you're gonna
get me in trouble with my family, with my kids, with my wife.
We have 3 shows this week, and we're really happy to welcome Howard County Superintendent Dr. Michael Martirano to the show. And we have booked 8 shows for May and 1 for June already. And
Bananas.
So, I think, and we continue to say this has been an opportunity for us to talk with some really fantastic folks and hear about what's on their mind and hear about the real issues and challenges that they're addressing as we look at this new temporary normal that we're dealing with.
Yeah, it's a privilege to have this outlet. It's a privilege to have someone like Dr. Martirano on the show with everything going on with the school system. I know that our listeners want to hear from him and talk about how remote learning is being rolled out. I consider myself fortunate every day to have this podcast, but particularly now during this time that people are really starving for information and everything's uncertain, to be able to cultivate this for them. But first, as we always do, let's do our 3 things.
Let's do it.
You go first, I go first.
I'll kick it off.
All right, go for it.
So the cost of COVID-19, and I think this is really important to talk about because the cost is impacting every facet of our life. But what we wanted to focus on is the cost to Howard County. And I'm going to read it, and I'm going to read this quote from the papers. This was from the budget.
Yeah, the operating budget.
Yes. And so in the past few weeks, Howard County has incurred nearly $4 million in costs related to the COVID-19 response, and that number is growing weekly. Howard County is estimating a revenue loss of over $35 million from the pandemic in the current fiscal year, with major losses in income tax, recordation, hotel tax, admission, and amusement tax, and various fees and permits. For context, the average actual revenue growth of the county over the past 3 years was less than $25 million per year. And so I think it's important to talk about this because this is a huge impact on our entire country, right? It's a global impact. But when you really start to talk about the numbers and look at what this cost is in our county and think about the budget and what we need to ensure happens in Howard County, it's mind-blowing. It is really mind-blowing, and it's a challenge, and it's not a challenge that's going to be resolved quickly.
Yeah, and also, as I think many people have heard about, while there has been an attempt at relief packages for small businesses, and there have been relief packages and stimulus payments directly to individuals, and while neither of them are going to be enough to get through this, there's still relief packages. There have not been state and local tax revenue relief packages. And as a matter of fact, that's an ongoing battle in Congress right now. And this next round is not likely to have that relief. So when we're looking at the loss of $30+ million as a result of this, our county is going to be put in a really rough spot. So I think we've got the right leadership there to manage it. I know there's a recordation tax that's being proposed by council members Rigby and Jones that's being considered by the council right now. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in future shows. But make no mistake that COVID is not just something that's going to manifest itself on Wall Street. It's going to manifest itself in county revenue and state revenue. So
right. And we've talked about this. I mean, the effect of COVID on the county budget, on education, on health, and how it has highlighted health disparities, although we should have already known they existed, and housing. I mean, it's just COVID is a beast, and it will take some innovative and creative leadership when we come out of this challenge to figure out how to make things right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's important to talk about the numbers because it's real.
Yes, numbers matter.
Yeah. So the other thing I'm thinking about before I kick it to your third thing,
please do.
which will be interesting, is special election for Council District 7. And so ballots were mailed out And I think there was some concern or question as to whether or not you needed a stamp to mail your ballot back. You don't. And so this is for the seat that was vacated by the late Elijah Cummings when he passed away. And I just think we should always remind people that that they should vote. And that elections matter. And so I hope everyone who's in District 7 has their ballot. I will say this, I have mine, my kid does not. And so we're trying to figure out and sort that out in our home. But we really should highlight that because it's important to bring that to folks' attention.
Candace, I have not received my ballot.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
Nicole not only received her special election ballot, but she also received her absentee ballot for the primary.
Ooh.
Because my wife is on that kind of stuff. I mean, she requests that stuff early. I've received my voter registration card 3 times since I moved. So I have 3 versions of that if anyone would like a copy. I have not received my special election ballot. Now, the good thing is that there are methods by which if I still don't get it as it gets closer to the April 28th deadline, I can print it out and mail it. But it's making me anxious because I've never, since I turned 18 years of age, not voted in an election. I've voted in it doesn't matter the election. When I lived in Columbia, I voted in every village election. I voted in every election I have available to me. For me not to have my ballot is driving me a little bit batty. And I see a bunch of community leaders saying, let us know if you've not received your ballot. And I appreciate that. But I'm like, I'm almost embarrassed. And so I'm saying it for the first time on the podcast. I haven't received my ballot. And so as it gets closer, I will vote. And I will be voting for a past guest on this show. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Let's get this straight. I know, and here's the other thing. The Board of Elections, just like every other institution, is experiencing unique pressures on its operations that we should all be sympathetic to. And so I am not blaming the Board of Elections. I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong. As a matter of fact, I think they're managing this in a really admirable way. I'm just personally experiencing anxiety because I don't have my ballot.
So you and Milan will have to get together and figure this out now. What's the third thing we're thinking about?
So the third thing we're thinking about, and this relates to one of my friends, and I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to comment on it, whether or not it would help him or hurt him to bring it up, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. And that's the recent dust up over Comptroller Peter Francho's Chief of Staff Len Foxwell, a post he had on Facebook. Essentially, the post that he had on Facebook was targeting those that were having these reopen protests and making a joke that was certainly dark humor about how they should attract all of these people into a warehouse, give them banana moon pies, and say that there might be a door prize for a Scott Baio autographed photograph. I mean, it was very heavy snark at not just Trump fans. It was people that support Trump and also are participating in these reopen protests. Well, the Maryland Republican Party did not care for this at all. And they have demanded for his resignation, suggesting that this was some sort of fascist Nazi proposal and how horrible this is, that he would want these people to die. I mean, he never at one point suggested that was it. He was more saying, if you don't think COVID's real, well, you can find out this way. And the comptroller has defended his guy. He said, I'm not firing him. He's a personal friend. He does a good job. And I will say that Len Foxwell is probably one of the best chiefs of staff in politics. I mean, what he does and how he manages his boss's scope of work, politics, and I'm not saying campaign politics. I'm saying sort of how he puts the focus and spotlight is without peer. And while I'll say, I get, he makes me nervous in some of the fights he picks, and that's coming from me. Like
Right.
I am
Some
not,
fights now.
I'm not cautious. But and I think that probably this experience has maybe made him see the fringe of what happens. But I wanted to take the opportunity to one, comment on how ridiculous it is that these people want to disobey stay at home orders, but then because Len put something on Facebook, they want him fired. Like, sorry, Karen, you can't call the manager on this one. Like, this man is living his own life, and he's speaking his own freedoms, and you know, that's what you get when you do something stupid like have a reopen protest.
So the only thing I'll add to this is, because I didn't really follow it, as I didn't see the original post. I must have missed it somehow, but I did.
That's why I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring it up on the show, because I'm like, am I bringing?
Yeah, no, it's here's all I'm gonna say about this. Like, it's just mean, right? Like, I think it's mean, and you know, he was speaking his mind on his private page. I don't know what the original post was about or what he said, but I just think, I'm just going to make a broad statement. I think it's mean to attack someone for their personal views based on something that they say on their personal page. I also think it's mean to MPIA people who are private citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think it's mean to send nasty anonymous letters about people who are trying to do things that are good in the community. And so that's really all I have to say about that.
And with that, would you like to welcome our guest to the show, Candace?
I would. With that, I would like to officially welcome our guest to the show. Dr. Michael J. Martirano was named superintendent for the Howard County Public School System in July of 2018, after serving as interim superintendent since May of 2017. On August 22nd, 2019, Dr. Martirano released a historic redistricting proposal, which recommend moving nearly 7,400 students. This was the first redistricting proposal in Howard County history to redistrict based on socioeconomic status and overcrowding, using their free and reduced meals program as a metric to rebalance rates of poverty across the school system. While this plan was not ultimately adopted, it set the parameters for debate and ultimately resulted in a redistricting plan that made Howard County schools more equitable and balanced. On April 17th, 2020, State Superintendent of Schools Karen Salomon announced that all Maryland schools were closed in response to COVID-19. Dr. Salomon then extended that closure to May 15th of 2020. In response, local school systems have rolled out remote learning programs, with Howard County's underway as we speak. We're excited to have Dr. Martirano back on the show to discuss this and many other things. Welcome to the show, Dr. Martirano.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Great to see both of you.
Good. So you've heard our summary of last year's redistricting discussion. We're not going to delve too deep into that because we know it's a sensitive subject in our community and also one that is currently under litigation. I did want to provide you an opportunity to reflect on that process and comment generally on what you were able to achieve. Because I'll say this, both Tom and I were very supportive of what you did and your work here. And so we wanted to give you that opportunity to comment.
Thank you for the opportunity to do that. And I hope both of you are doing well during this unprecedented time as we're all trying to maintain our health. The redistricting matter basically goes back to some basic metrics. We have a problem that needs to be solved. Our school system was woefully overcrowded. When I first arrived here in May of 2017, the first question people were asking me was, we need to redistrict. And when you have schools that are well over 130% capacity, schools that are well under 90% capacity, you have schools that are now 70% free and reduced meals rate and many below 5%. That's a problem that has taken place over time. And so we attempted to solve that problem by addressing first the capacity issue, but at the same time, I had to keep closely watch on our free and reduced meals rate, our poverty rate. We talk about equity all the time. And so this was a true opportunity for us to really examine equity from the vantage point of what our schools look like demographically, from the challenges of free and reduced meals, and effectuate change while trying to solve capacity issues, effectuating change by reducing the free and reduced meals rate. And I feel very positive about that. We were able to reduce our highest school, which was near 70% Stephen Forrest. Now our highest rate is about 54%.
Wow.
And we were able to move about 5,400 students that brought many of our schools closer to the capacity level of 90 to 110% and meeting within the bounds. So it was, from the vantage point of solving problems, it was a very successful process. How the process played out in the community is disheartening in many respects, but we move forward now to heal the community and moving forward to address the needs of our community in terms of the growth issue.
Well, thank you for that. And as we said, we really wanted to have you on to talk about remote learning. This has been quite the last 6 months for you, I'd say. But there has been a general sort of critique that other school systems rolled out their remote learning programs and resumed instruction faster than Howard County. Now, we are also seeing that many of those jurisdictions are now either having to stop or re-examine the entire way that they rolled that out now that things are underway. How would you like people to know, and what would you like to say in terms of why Howard County rolled it out the way that they did, and what was the time process for that? Why did it roll out the way it did?
Yeah, and I think that, thanks for the question. We took a very thoughtful, deliberate, intentional approach, recognizing our challenges within the delivery model. This just emerged upon us. And we recognized that the school system was not prepared. Not many school systems are prepared to hit a button and convert to online learning. So first and foremost, we wanted to take care of basic needs within our community. Once we closed, we wanted to ensure that children were fed, that families were taken care of, and remind everybody that we need to go back to Maslow: basic needs, food, shelter, and clothing. Take care of the essentials as we're trying to prevent the spread. As we were doing that, we pushed out a lot of supports and resources online. We pushed out our paper packets. We pushed out resources for our families as we began to build up to support a longer implementation of online learning. The challenges were, one, challenges which I exposed early on in my tenure, that we, again, were well under-supported in the arena of technology. We do not have one-to-one computing. We do not have the number of devices which we need. Many of our teachers didn't have the devices that they need in their classrooms to teach at the level of which I expect in the 21st century. So addressing that issue, and then acknowledging that our teachers are not prepared to teach in this arena of online. They are ones in front of the classroom who do a masterful job when children are in, but pre-K through 12 is not the instruction that we provide remotely. So we provide the scaffolding of support by providing the resources, first and foremost, of the paper packets, built up the needs in terms of our computers that we needed to push out, provided support and training for our teachers, and then purchased additional Chromebooks to ensure that our young people who needed Chromebooks were able to get the Chromebooks of which they needed. To date, we've pushed out close to 11,000 Chromebooks to our community we've delivered. Because that's an issue of equity. We have to provide the supports for all of our students. So in a very thoughtful, deliberate way, we want to be able to be prepared for the future. If we go on for an indefinite period, we now have the infrastructure support foundationally with the technology, the supports for our teachers, and the communications that we need to have with our families. So again, I wanted to make certain that we were positioned for the long game as opposed to the short flash in the pan at the beginning, as you say, that others are experiencing challenges. And every day I receive a briefing to ensure that we can mitigate any challenges that we may have.
So if I can ask a follow-up on that, sort of what you would say is that when you rolled it out, you wanted to roll it out so you didn't have to roll it back, that you wanted to make sure all the pieces were in place so that there would not be a additional interruption in learning after that point.
That is correct. I mean, and again, I keep using the words thoughtful and deliberate. We were hearing from our teachers union, that our teachers just needed the support. They needed the training. They needed the technical expertise. Our teachers are on a continuum. Many may have the expertise because they have more proficiencies in technologies, but others do not. And so all that being said, my biggest concern was providing the support to our teachers who were providing the support to our students so that we didn't have to roll it back. But at the same time, building up a website that had a lot of robust resources and supports for our families and our students to engage in. And I can say it's now been moving now for 2 weeks. I've been in and visited 12 classrooms virtually, and I'm extremely impressed with how that's going. And we're still refining it. I mean, there's a lot of work as far as communications and over communicating, sometimes recognizing families are working and competing for the same device, and having to manage the online learning with 2 or 3 or 4 children in the home.
And can we talk a little bit about the type of educational experience you expect that the parents and students will have? I saw something online the other day that said a teacher can't detect confusion through a video conference. And so how will we ensure that all children are getting what they need?
And that's an excellent question. The things that keep me up late at night are, one, are we able to, engage with every child? We have 59,000 young people, and I worry every night about the well-being and the safety of our children. So the fact is that we have to make certain we're, one, connecting with our children, doing sort of the wellness visits through what needs to occur. And I'm a little concerned right now that we've not been able to establish contact with all of our students, families that are homeless, that may be disenfranchised or dislocated from the community. We have 100 or so that we still are trying to follow up with, and that causes me great concern. So acknowledging that first and foremost, the engagement piece is critical. And then acknowledging that we want to provide the continuity of learning, that we expect every student to engage, but we know that not every student is going to engage at the level. So that we provide that level of baseline of instruction moving along at a positive level, but then also knowing an eye to the future, the students who disengage from the process, how do we bridge for a recovery of learning process in the future years when we hopefully get back to a traditional learning. So looking at it almost like a bridge year of scaffolding supports for acceleration and supports that need to occur, moving students forward, but knowing that it may not necessarily be 100% of what was occurring in the traditional classroom. It's a conundrum for us. By providing that engagement and providing resources to move forward, knowing that it's a different set of challenges.
So that raises a really good point that Dr. John King had brought up when he was on our show just the other week, which is what equity and remote learning. And I know just from watching you and hearing you speak that this has been a focus of yours. He brought up the fact that equity is much more than whether or not a kid has a device, and that there is a big concern that this time away from the school building is going to make those equity gaps even larger. And so my question for you would be, what is Howard County doing now to ensure that our most vulnerable students aren't left behind when they get back into the classroom, however many months from now that may be?
Yeah, I mean, you've used my expression, how do we tend to our most vulnerable of our students amongst us? And so our students who receive special education services, our students who are homeless, our students who are living in poverty, who require the meals, our ESOL students, how do we make those connections? And not all that cannot always be done remotely. So again, I don't want to be redundant, but providing access and equity, those two words go hand in hand. Access to ensure that hotspots are delivered, internet connection is available, devices are available for our students who are most vulnerable. So having that baseline of connection is important. But we also know, how do we replicate the face time with students, the time that we have them, the supports, the encouragement of family interactions during this particular time. And students that were living in challenging environments, that may be exacerbated during this time. I can tell you in terms of this conversation that as our teachers are checking in, our students are reporting child abuse and neglect issues that are occurring, and we're chronicling those and reporting those. Our mechanisms for following up on that has not diminished, and we're reporting that. Those things are happening. So how do we wrap ourselves around our children with love, care, and support while we're providing educational experiences as families are tending to basic needs of survival right now? I don't want to lose any of our children based upon the fact of being invisible in our community, that we lose them in the cracks because of the challenges. We have a greater responsibility now to connect and stay connected with our schools, and we're pushing that out every day. And our community is doing a great job with that.
We have a question from one of our listeners regarding the personal relationship between teachers and students.
Oh.
They're concerned about the abrupt removal of these teachers from their students' lives, and are concerned that the school system has instructed teachers to formalize their interaction with students under the new remote learning program. They were told that teachers are not allowed to contact students outside of the parameters set forth by the school system. Is that correct? And if so, why are these procedures in place? And is there some flexibility to allow teachers to connect with their students in a more genuine way?
Yeah, and I'm well aware of that. So first, let me respond to the first part of that is we miss our students tremendously. We want to engage. Today we had a virtual interaction with Earth Day and the Conservancy, and all of our students reported their projects. I'm meeting with groups of seniors regarding the missing of some of their senior activities and graduation. There's more of that happening all across our district. And so we miss our students. We want to be around our students, but now doing that remotely, there are concerns around privacy issues, around how we interact with our students, what that looks like. And so we put some guidelines on that, but there is a level of flexibility, for additional follow-up if need be. But in the confines of a classroom, we had to put some restrictions on that because we've had some challenges with people hacking our system, people trying to get into classroom settings. We've had to put some real restrictions on how a student enters the classroom. That has been apparent in other districts, and we're trying to mitigate all of those and not have disciplinary problems in the middle of all of this. But these are the things that are happening as we're trying to establish the relationships. And I know exactly what they're talking about. It feels like it's a little cold, but we want to continue to have that flexibility and connections while monitoring the learning environment for privacy and protections that have to occur.
That's good to hear. If I could just follow up, I've heard from several people today, and I saw several things online where people said, it was so great to receive a phone call from my kid's school to have that sort of personal interaction. And so it's good to hear that there's some flexibility there to allow administrations, teachers, whomever, to connect with their students in a real genuine way.
Absolutely. And it's real and authentic. I mean, the main piece is staying connected to school, and that's built on relationships. Our teachers are struggling right now. I hear it constantly. I receive just constant emails and communications from our staff. They miss our kids. I mean, I miss our kids. We all do. That's what we do for a living and our calling and our passion. So this is real hard trying to keep that connection.
So we said we were moving on from redistricting, but we do have a question related to redistricting. At the last school board meeting, there was the concern raised that the separation that these children are already experiencing due to COVID-19 is being compounded by redistricting. And I will say, having watched that school board meeting, I was so impressed by your administrative staff and the manner in which they were able to professionally and comprehensively respond to those questions. But obviously, not everyone has the privilege or opportunity, or I'll be honest, interest in watching a school board meeting. I was wondering if you may be willing to address that to our listeners about what is the school system doing to sort of walk and chew gum at the same time as it relates to addressing the separation from COVID-19 while also processing the necessary steps for redistricting next year?
Well, let me respond to the first part. I'm a little disappointed that not everybody's watching those school board meetings. I thought they were. I mean, they're riveting at times. So understand, I appreciate that question as well. At the last Board of Education meeting, my board directed me to provide an update to the implementation with where we were. So I provided a very clear synopsis, which can be found online on board docs where the Board of Education resides on our website, and gave an update on where we are with all the implementation. And we are chewing gum and walking at the same time. We have moved forward with great acceleration and velocity in a very thoughtful, deliberate way to achieve all the tasks needed for the implementation for this upcoming school year. We're about 80 to 90% through all of that. And a piece of that is maintaining the level of connection with our students, during this process to be concerned about this transition. So we've been meeting with our principals, we've been tending to all of those needs, and we feel very confident that we can continue both of those at the same time and attend to the emotional well-being of our students as well as our staff and our community during this transition. Because at the end of the day, if that were to be halted, it exacerbates even further the problems of which we have around growth and building new schools and the capacity issues. So we've taken a very thoughtful approach of analyzing that, and it was my recommendation that we continue to move forward and continue to provide the support to our students in that transition. And we'll have that opportunity to do that. We will have plenty of opportunity if we get back to that level of normal.
Yeah. So other jurisdictions we've seen have been considering summer school to make up for the lost time caused by COVID-19. Is that something that Howard County is considering?
It is, and if you hear something in the background, I apologize. My community is celebrating at 6 o'clock every night, so there's somebody playing a trumpet in the background. If you hear that, that's not me doing that in my free time. Yes, so I alluded to in my introductory comments the fact of we are in a continuity of learning. We are rolling this out together as a state, and everybody's at different places with that based upon their ability and the robust nature of their school system. I just defined where we are as a school system and a community. The next part that we're jumping to is the recovery of learning efforts. What will our summer school programs look like? What will be the opportunities? And again, the thoughtfulness of the need for additional devices provides us now a different way of looking how we deliver that support. And we may be able to have a larger breadth and scope by reaching more young people by having an online delivery that meets more students' needs if we can't go back into our buildings, and continue to provide those scaffolding of supports. So we're already looking to an eye of what the future may hold for the recovery. And as I alluded to the fact of, I don't want to hold any child harmless. Every student must be held harmless in this process, I should say. And there should be no punishment. It's not their fault, but we have to provide supports to them to provide the continuity for their next grade level, their next place in life, whether it's going to college, military, or a job, so that they are prepared for that. But I think on the other end of that, Candace, I know you work at the college level at UMBC. Colleges are going to have to be receptive to that too, and
Sure.
marry up with pre-K through 12 to say that bridge, we just you can't just expect a child maybe to be on where they should be ready to go on that first day of freshman class. There may have to be some support to bring them up to speed to get them ready. So it's a marriage of higher ed, pre-K through 12, providing the summer bridge programs that need to occur, and providing a more robust nature. And again, I feel very confident with the board approving the additional purchase of Chromebooks for us, that we can transform our district now more to a one-to-one at the secondary level, and look for other opportunities to provide learning opportunities when there may be gaps for students in the future.
And understanding that the features of education that require one-on-one are lost and hampered by all this. I'm more curious with this question about what are the services that, no matter how you look at it, you cannot replicate under this environment. For instance, when we talked to Dr. King, we talked about guidance counselors, and we talked about college counseling. What is the thing that you are stumped by and you just can't seem to get into this remote learning system?
Well, I always talk about teaching is something that is scientifically but done artfully. Mm. And so the art of teaching is about the connections that you make with children every day, knowing where children are, providing the supports needed through the counseling process, the interactions, showing love, care, compassion, leading with empathy, being that support to a child who may have no other supports, and school is that safe haven that's going to make the difference. I know John King well. He and I have similar backgrounds. We're both children of poverty, and we've had life experiences that have been challenging. Leading with that set of lenses, without schools and the supports that I had, I may not be in the position I am today. He may not be where he is. And I look at all of our children through that lens of how we provide supports to the ones who have the most needs in our community. So those things that you can't replicate in paper, pencil. And that goes for all of our children who need that connection and the love and the providing of the supports that are there, that we are all suffering from in this time right now that can't be replicated. So those are just things that you can't even put price tags on. They're priceless.
Yeah. Dr. Martirano, what does reopening look like? What are you starting to look at and plan for what that might look like? And I don't think it's going to be, perhaps it's not going to be the same school system that we had prior to COVID-19. And so, and it might be a phased in approach. And so what does that look like to you?
Well, I mean, I have to take into account a number of different variables. So we first and foremost have to say, what are the signs? What's going to be the triggers that will allow us to go back into schoolhouses that are heavily populated, where you can't achieve social distancing when I have several thousand students in a school at the high school level? What does that look like and feel like? So I want to know things such as vaccines and testing and social distancing. How's that going to look and feel? Because when we bring children back into schools with our adults, is it going to re-blossom and have another outbreak? I mean, we put ourselves in a position to be very vulnerable in that sense. My other challenge is the number of teachers and staff members who may or may not want to be in schoolhouses because of their own safety and their own fear. We have a lot of people in our community that are frightened, that are scared, who do not want to get sick, who have underlying health conditions, who don't want to have themselves compromised. So would I have enough staff to actually support the day-to-day operations of a school? And so very systematically, I'm asking those questions. And then that leads me to then preparing for a longer time in the future of providing online instruction, why I'm critically focused on providing the devices needed for our students to do what needs to be done, the supports for our teachers for the long haul. But I think first and foremost, we have to go back to, as I started with, Maslow's hierarchy, safety. How do I provide the assurance to our parents who say, when we say it's okay to go back to school, Dr. Martirano, can you assure that my child is going to be safe from getting sick? I have to be able to answer to that. And not only do I have to answer to that, our board, our community, our state and local elected officials do as well. So this is not just an isolated decision. It's one that has a lot of accountability and a lot of balance that has to occur in that.
Yeah,
So,
can I just make one more
yeah,
quick
of course.
comment? You know, it's interesting sometimes to read what's online and to hear people talk about the quality of instruction that they want at home with an online model, when they're not thinking about, to your point, Maslow's hierarchy, right? Like they're not thinking about the kids in the system who don't have food, the kids who are abused, and just that frame sometimes is helpful in sort of reframing, for lack of a better term, how you look at the enormity of this complex situation. And I just think, I just have to say, I don't think all parents think about that. They're thinking about, like, you know, what am I getting at home? I expect my kid to have AP chemistry at home, you know, remotely. And there's kids in our system who don't have food. And so I really appreciate your perspective on that. And I think that lends to a better understanding of what we really need to provide for all students in our school system.
Thank you. I want to also just follow up on that. I'm visiting as many of our food sites as I can on a regular basis. Our essential employees, our cafeteria workers, our staff who are providing those things, those meals every day is absolutely critically important. But I'm so impressed with Columbia Cares, led by Erica Chavarria, one of our outstanding teachers at Wildlake, the online learning platform at Oakland Mills with Amy Brooks. There are just a number of things that have emerged organically. And on Monday, I visited 3 of our 14 sites. And the lines that were out in front from the community who needed additional support, maybe diapers and food, basic needs, the lines are getting longer. And we need to always acknowledge what we can do when many people have so much in our community. How do we take care of the individuals who need more? And that's how we will be defined as a community in this. What do we do for the less fortunate as we're tending to the students and everyone else who has supports and moving them forward academically? I'm hearing stories, and I get them regularly, of family members who are fighting illness, who have one device at home. They're doing their online learning, children competing with that for the learning. And the stress that families are under is real, it's palpable, and we cannot turn away from that. But I have to attend to everybody on the continuum and move us forward with leaving no one behind.
And sort of picking up off of leaving no one behind, you know, the education experience, the education being provided by our school system is only as good as attendance. And so this is a 2-part question. One is, what is the school system doing to track attendance? And 2, is there sort of a public information campaign to make sure that those that aren't part of those, you know, high-end wealthy families that were waiting with bated breath for any online learning to start, is there a public information campaign to make sure that these other families know about this and are participating?
Yeah, and I think we all have a role in that. I mean, my job during this period of time is to communicate. I mean, my mantra is communicate, communicate, communicate. When in doubt, communicate more and over communicate during these times. So I ask everybody to tune in, to our website, hcps.org, and look at all of the information we push out in our updates every day, and to be aware of the challenges that many of our families are experiencing as we provide supports to everyone else. So all as I ask is that as we're addressing this pandemic as a community, that we acknowledge that people are scared and frightened and they're trying to maintain their health, and people are sick. There are families that I know that are sick and have individuals who have COVID-19 in their families, and how that strains a child when they're trying to get their dad or mom well while we're expecting them to learn. So I'm asking that all of us, rise up and provide supports. Those who are very fortunate, who have the ability to take care of things. What are we doing to take care of those who don't? So we continue to message that, but my public campaign message on that is always taking care of all 59,000 students, but providing supports for the ones who need more supports on a regular basis, and ensuring every child is taken care of.
But to just circle back on that, is the school system tracking attendance, and do we know what percentage of students are participating in the online platform?
Yeah, excellent question. We are tracking now so many pieces, and we were discussing today our attendance guidelines, what that looks like, how we check in, how teachers check in. There's several different formal times for that to occur at the high school level for them to do their work. So check in on Monday, get the actual work defined, complete the work, and then check in again on Friday. We're looking at some different models at the elementary level for that to occur, more connections happening at the elementary level. And then following up, as I alluded to earlier, what I'm concerned about are the students that we may not be able to communicate with, that they may have moved out of the community and we're unaware of that. And the follow-up mechanisms that principals are putting in place through the feedback from the teachers to ensure that children are safe. I may sound like a broken record, but it is my mantra to ensure that all children are safe during this time. And if we have indications of child abuse or neglect, that we encourage our staff to report that, which they are, and then we'll follow up with DSS and other individuals who need to provide the supports. Even and everybody's been wonderful. Our partners, our police, our sheriff, everyone who needs to support our children are there when we call.
So I guess it's too early to know because I suppose it's only been rolled out at the high school level right now, correct?
No, high school and elementary.
High school and elementary, and
middle.
Is there anything in place to say, well, this percentage of students are checking in on their assignments, or this percentage of students are turning in assignments?
We are, and we know what those percentages are. I'm not at liberty to say that right this second. We're verifying that it's relatively high.
Good,
but not as high as I'd like it, because I was asking the questions today in a meeting to say, can you tell me with authority the number of students that we have not made contact with? And that number was close to 100, and that was a lot more for me than what I would expect. But we're doing everything that we can to follow up and executing the additional staff of which we have, our PPWs, our pupil personnel workers who do this, our guidance counselors, our staff members who follow up, our administrators, to ensure the safety and well-being and not lose that connection with our kids.
So you've been on our show before, and we do our elevator questions at the end that allow listeners to get to know a little bit more about you.
Okay. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. That's right.
And so the first is and we've added a couple new ones. So
okay.
What was the first book, movie, or music recommendation you made to a friend or family member?
Not first, last.
I'm sorry, last. Book.
I don't want to hear about the book Dr. Martirano recommended when he was 6.
Yeah, the last.
It might have been Dr. Seuss. It could have been a goodie.
Yeah. Well, I'll focus on what I'm reading right now, and I've recommended to my whole staff. It's in the middle of this, trying to find a level of balance within ourselves, because our staff is under incredible stress as well. We're all. We talk about social distancing, not being social isolation. How do we stay connected through Zoom meetings? I'm actually reading Braving the Wilderness by Brene Brown. And that whole opportunity of finding the belonging, but then the courage to stand alone, through these tough times and making right decisions is something that we're that I've been recommending for folk to read. And it serves as a balance for myself. Did you ask him, was that just an either or do I have to pick
All three.
All of them.
Movie and music.
Movie and music, yeah.
I'm listening right now to a lot of Dave Matthews. For some reason, I'm really into him. I've been consistently into him and listening to some of the old pieces there. I've got that programmed on Pandora, and I'm recommending that. And Bruno Mars, to lift you up. You know, I've been listening to a lot of that. I've got that on my, and I've been walking constantly. I've been walking like a fiend in the early morning and the evening, and I've got a variety of different playlists, Coldplay and Bruno Mars and Dave Matthews I've been listening to in the background all afternoon. Movies is a much different thing for me. I have such an eclectic taste, but I really enjoyed Once Upon Hollywood. And I've watched that twice, having the perspective of what was actually happening during that historical time in 1969. And that's one which I really like overall. So those are the sort of the three that come to mind.
Yeah, so I love that movie. And two, a little tip for those with babies, if you can find a clean Bruno Mars song, I find that it will always make a baby chill out if they're crying. Like when my daughter was an infant, if she was fussing and we played Uptown Funk, it was
I'm there.
It was almost creepy, but
it's a clean version though. A couple of them have those, you know.
Right.
Yes, you got to do the clean version.
Where did I learn that word?
So I don't remember what your answer to this question was before. So if you repeat it, we won't call you out for it. But what is the most unpopular benign opinion you hold?
Oh, you know this one, and I'm constantly getting in battles on this. But people won't let it go.
Oh, fruit on pizza.
No, pineapple on pizza.
So other fruit is fine? It's just pineapple?
No fruit on pizza. But this will not let, people will not, I can't shake it. People send me memes. People send me tweets. There should never be pineapple on pizza. Let's get it right.
Yes.
Well, you've got a fan named Jenny that is going to be disappointed to hear you say that, but nevertheless, I think that's a fair one.
And it creates controversy. I call it out in our opening meetings, and I'll get email. People want to fight me over that one.
I bet you've had a lot of pizza delivered to you with fruit on it.
I've had that and fruit cake. Pick your poison.
Which are both no's. Although my dad eats pineapple, and I know he's listening. He eats pineapple.
It's sacrilege.
It's nasty. What podcasts, if any, are you listening to?
Oh, good question. I don't, besides from yours.
Good answer.
Good answer. Probably a lot of NPR, Fresh Air. I mean, that's pretty much the level. I've listened to some of the series of things that have then been converted to then like Netflix and things like that. But I enjoy some of the quick vignettes on NPR.
What is the best meal in Howard County? And how some have been revising this during the quarantine is, what is the best meal that you have had delivered to you or picked up for carryout during quarantine?
Wow, I love all this food establishments, so let's get that right. But I live downtown Columbia, and I can walk to Clyde's. I am on a kick right now for 3 weeks in a row, a treat on Friday night. I've had their salmon with their faro, and they've got artichokes in it, and it just does something to my mouth. I mean, it's a party in there when all that together. So I've had that meal 3 times, and trying to support all of our local restaurants who then are providing support to our community. But Clyde's is a standby for me always to get something good to eat.
Great.
What activity or hobby have you rediscovered during this quarantine?
Well, I think, I'm reading a lot about, how you handle this and providing advice to folk. And one is, make certain you have a routine every day. Get up, make your bed. And I'm an exercised health nut, so I will work out. I've got some weights. I work out with that. I plank in the morning. I try to walk 7,500 steps every day, early morning and night. Keeping that going is extremely important. I've dusted off the guitar and playing that a little bit at night to maintain a level. I've tried to turn the TV off. It's just annoying, and I can only take so much of that. And just trying to reconnect with family and friends while I'm walking, put my earbuds in, and just randomly pick some of my friends and family just to connect with them and not lose that social connection. Have not been doing a lot of cooking. I'm trying to avoid, making poor choices around eating, but definitely trying to maintain the physical and mental health during all of this.
So here's a new question that Candace added that is probably my new favorite one of these questions, which is, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Wow, that's there's a lot of good advice. One, to whom much is given, much is expected, has been a guiding premise. I come from an Italian-Irish background with a lot of immigrants in my family, and understanding that we have been given opportunities, never to squander those opportunities, to work hard, be kind, and to whom much is given, much is expected. And I've lived my whole life providing the level of support to those less fortunate, and providing an eye to that. That's in my DNA. I'm programmed to do so based upon my own upbringing. And that advice has dominated my entire life, always to give to others, always to provide supports, and to whom much is given, much is expected.
And the question that we end all of our shows with is, what do you think we need to do to elevate Maryland?
I want at times, I don't understand why so many people always have to take such a negative stance on things. In the middle of a crisis, seek first to understand, then to be understood, to love each other, lead with love, care, and compassion, and kindness, and to be understanding, making those more than just words, as opposed to going in at a vitriolic level online and on platforms that serve no purpose but to harm others who are trying to do good work. And my tolerance for that is extremely low, when in fact there are a lot of really good people who are doing good work. We need to hold hands, we need to love each other, and we need to support each other and elevate Maryland and be known for a state that, as we're doing the technical pieces of response, that we're doing it with love, care, and compassion and commitment to take care of those least amongst us. And I would just hope that we're being good role models for our kids in that arena, to be good citizens. Learning does not always have to take place in the classroom with instruction. There's character education, and being good citizens and modeling good behavior for our children every day is critical. So I hope that we will always elevate above, rise above, and always provide that level of positivity and understanding and kindness. It will go a long way, trust me.
We always love asking that question because we get phenomenal answers. And so thank you for that.
Thank you.
And Dr. Martirano, I don't want to close this podcast without saying that you issued a redistricting proposal that fundamentally changed the conversation on equity in Howard County. You did it at a lot of personal cost and reputation cost. And I think that even though it was very painful to go through, and even though your plan was not the one that was adopted, I just want to thank you for so many people in Howard County and so many children that may never know that redistricting is even a thing, but will benefit from it. What you did was revolutionary. It was very important. And thank you for coming on the show, but thank you for doing that, because that was big.
Thank you very much for those words, and thank you for what you're doing to advance information within our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Facebook Live audience.
Okay, bye.